Well, hey there, YouTube. It's Petey Two Finger, and I thought maybe I would talk a bit about the imaginary album that I uploaded to this channel yesterday. Um, First off, if I count, I'm coming up with 10. 10 Petey Two Finger solo quote unquote albums, which, of course, these are just songs recorded at home. But to me, going through the process of playing all those tracks and coming up with all this music, it's about the same process that I would do if I paid to go to a professional studio. So from my standpoint, it's an album. From reality, it isn't. It's just some songs. But it sounds better saying, "Hey, I'm about to start working on an album," than "Hey, I'm about to start working on just some songs." I mean, they're not demos in that I'm not going to be taking these songs into a real studio and recording them and getting them ripped to vinyl. So it's an awkward thing, and I spend way too much time expressing that. Now, um, if I really look at it and count like one of them has 36 songs on it, I should really count that as a double album. And there is another one that has like around 30. Um, so yeah, technically, uh, I think there's three of them that are like that. So yeah, is it 13? Is it 10? This is all grasping at straws. What sets this year's recording apart? Well, if you go through the history of what I did, I played in a bar band uh, playing covers where I played bass and I sang backups and put a lot into that. I was in a lot of bands. Back when I was doing this, it seemed like everyone was looking for a bass player. Like it just wasn't really as quite as hip as playing guitar or any other job in a band. So I was always able to find a group that was looking for a bass player that I could go in there, get the job, and somewhere 3 months, a year down the line, I would go, well, uh, since we're doing show and tell, take a look at this, and I would show that I was missing fingers, and nobody in any one of those bands ever knew or suggested. So that kind of meant that and no one ever saw, like no one ever looked and said, "Gee, you're playing like it looks like this claw shape when you're playing that I've never seen anyone like." All you got to do is look at me and see that these two fingers are never in use. No one ever noticed that. No one ever suspected. So that to me made me feel really good about playing bass and that I was in my comfort zone. Playing a six string, and you're expected to do these things that I just can't do. So I, when I stepped away from that, I was pretty jaded and uh, not enthusiastic about the idea of playing in a group with other people. What I was happy about, that's a big word, is recording music at home. And this was in the early mid 90s when they were doing a lot of technological advancements in specifically MIDI and sequencing and programming drums and this type of thing was happening. It was state of the art. So I jumped into that. I got a computer and synchronized the computer to a tape machine. Um, and then the days of recording at home began and learning how to write songs and getting better at doing that. There was I started off with a 4 track, and there was moments in there on that 4 track, like, at this point, I'm nowhere near where I'm at now, so I'm not expecting a really beginning, middle, end kind of finished project that sounds almost as good as a CD, like what I'm doing now. So there was much more. It was much more experimental, and there was moments in there where I could hear where magical things would happen, guitar tricks or several tracks lining up to produce something that was greater than them individually, and that type of magical moment thing was enough to inspire me to think that I could do this. And then I was singing. I was writing words and singing. Um, I kept improving on that, and the equipment got better. I got better gear. Like the 4 track kind of had a lot of hiss because it's a cassette. And then when I got a professional Tascam 48, I think it was, half-inch reel-to-reel, 8-channel recorder with 8 channels of DBX noise reduction, external rack mount. That setup really sounded good. So eventually, I started doing stuff with the family band, and we were recording that. And I was doing solo stuff, and I was writing. And somewhere around '96, in the same year, the first family band album, Shrimpy and the Peace self-titled debut, which is children's music, but it holds a special place in my heart. It's got geared up guitars, and back when I was playing through a Big Muff and an EQ to scoop the mids on a Big Muff. And then I had a Boss bass chorus, a Dodd bass chorus that I would set the rate at nil and get this kind of super tight delay sound. Um, we did that first Kitty album, Shrimpy and the Peace self-titled, and then I did this thing. Oh, wait a minute. I did this album called Crackle Pucky. And that was really like a thing. Like I wrote all the lyrics in one night. Um, and that showed me that was a step up, you know. Um, I really tried to do some extraordinary guitar setups like, talk box or reverse guitar stuff. Uh, Stuff that you don't hear in classic rock so much. So there was those two elements going on of like this witty dealing with the loss of my fingertips and the loss of my father, and then this kind of guitar trickery. So at that point, like I started to feel like pretty good compared to, and that's the theme of this. It's not so much for me to sit here and tell you what I did and how great I am. It's because I'm not. I shouldn't be anywhere near a guitar with these missing fingertips. I'm here to encourage people to invest yourself because that's when you step up. That's when the end product gets better. And the more you keep doing this, the more you're stepping up, and the easier on the ears the recordings become. Because if you go back and listen, you'll hear it's not doesn't sound like this stuff I'm recording now. The stuff I'm recording now sounds way better. And that's something that's not going to happen overnight for you if you're recording music. Unfortunately, it just isn't. Unless you pay, unless you go out of your bedroom and you have a producer and you're working in a professional studio, you might see that type of huge improvement. But I think for most of us, it's just um, it's a path, you know, and that beginning experimental phase where you're just futzing around and the stuff maybe it doesn't begin quite right, maybe there isn't a beginning, middle, and end, or whatever its flaws may be. That stuff is equally important as your rite of passage. So the thing to not get hung up on is when you do hit a high water mark, we'll come around to the next Family Band album, which was called 13. That was like 30 cover tunes, and she was 13 years old, my daughter, who was singing for us. So that's like Faith No More on one side and some Pink Floyd. And then the other side is like kind of post LSD Beatles. Anyway, we did that 13, which was like 40, 45 days of recording. And then I did this one, which is called Can't Compete. And Can't Compete, I got a bunch of sound effects CDs and I sampled my Atari and my Nintendo. I used basically everything in the house. If it made noise, like a little weird clay flute thing, I had a box of children's percussion toys. I got my trumpet from my mom. And then my stepdad was like, are you done with that trumpet? It was like, it was mine. It was my trumpet. And I had to like rush it back, like he thought I was going to pawn it out. Anyway, yeah, Petey's thin skinned. So I spent quite a bit of time. I think it was 3 months I spent on the sequences because this was back when I was using a MIDI controller, a keyboard. I had a Kawai K11 keyboard, and which is it's decent. It's a decent general MIDI keyboard, velocity sensitive. It's pretty nice. So I used that K11 and I spent a good amount of time on the sequences. And then the recording, probably another month of recording. Um, and I used a Boss GT6. I used that a lot. So that is a very personal. It's even more personal than Can't Compete. I was telling you, or Crockapucky is about the loss of my fingertips and kind of playing in a band, quitting a band, ditching that scene, setting out as a home recordist. Um, and then I had a thing where I got caught with some ditchweed. I was making brownies and they weighed. I got nailed for the carrier weight, like there was a pound of butter. So it came out like it was this ridiculous big bust, and it wasn't. So I had to go away for a little while. So that angry album, that I was kind of pissed off. I wasn't in a good place. And I'll tell you what, at that same time, I remember drinking vodka, and then the next morning, going down the road, there was a grocery store right next to where we live, and I went over there to buy a frozen pizza. And I saw these sun dogs in the sky. I'd never seen that. It's a natural phenomenon where these two really bright pyramids of rainbow light were appearing with the sun in the center of it, and I was just like, but I had written lyrics. It just all came out, and I wrote. It was like I went to bed, and I, as soon as my head hit the pillow, I came back up, and I went and got a pen. I was hearing this thing, which turned out to be Introduction, the song I'm like one of my most. It's my best song from that first period. Um, and all of those words ended up being two albums, and that second album was more the family stuff about when I came up, an older brother who was abusive, and it was not good. It was really, horrifically bad. It went on for a long time. Um, he used the fact that my dad was physically abusive against me. So yeah, it's kind of a venomous thing that can't compete, um, but it was really healthy for me to exercise all that. Like I'm still not cool with this guy because he hasn't changed so much, but it was really made me a lot easier to deal with the past. And that, my point of don't get hung up, that's exactly what happened to me. I listened to this thing and it was like Roger Waters listening to The Wall or something. Like I couldn't believe how good it was. I know that's a really makes me sound like a person who's full of himself, but that's scared me away from trying recording again for many years. Can't compete. That's the one that messed me up. Now I have a friend online, guy named Jimmy Photon. I met him. I saw a video of him sitting at a table, and the way that he talked about the circuit was nonchalant, but he also didn't elevate himself. Like he knew what was up, but he didn't come across like he was better than you for knowing that. And because immediately when I first clicked on his video, I was like, what's this Joker doing? It was so relaxed. It was so like flippant, the attitude about it. I was like, what's this? Like, I didn't like him. And so then he kind of won me over. And then I started watching more of his content. And I'm like, I have a lot in common with this guy. Like, we're really similar in the way that we think, in the way that we approach this stuff. And he's totally different. Like his guitar approach and his sound, it's totally different than me. But we both know about kind of the same stuff. He knows about all the tricks that I have used. I don't know so much about all his germanium snubber caps between the emitter and base to ground and all his stuff that he knows, all this amazing snapbox knowledge. Anyway, I got to be in real life friends with Jim, and we've had some like 6 hour phone conversations where I'm so lonely I wouldn't let him get off the phone for like 6 hours. The poor guy. Anyway, he reached out to me and gifted me this Roland VG8. And that thing is most of what you hear on all of the recordings, starting with minor technical difficulties. And what happened was I got this thing, and he said he called me or he emailed me, and he said, "Hey, you have a Roland GK2, which is the synth pickup." And I said, "Yeah, I do. I've got a GR50 here that my wife bought for me when we were dating, which is a rack mount guitar synthesizer that ended up pooping out on me." But Jimmy Photon sent me a GR1 guitar synthesizer. So he sent me some stuff. I got a VG88, I got a VG8, and a GR1. And having these things, see, I have herniated discs and I live with chronic pain. So to be able to sit down on an office chair, and I'm kind of surrounded by a couple of computers, and then this VG8 sits on a TV tray, and I can use this one Strat and spin this knob and get like a 12 string sound that's usable. This sounds really good. I can get different guitar tones, different distortions, and different cleans. Perfect for recording. I don't need to mic and amp because I live in an apartment. And that's what you hear on all these albums. And none of this would have happened because I was not, I had moved on. I had done my magnum opus. I had done this can't compete thing, which no one listens to any of that stuff. I sing on it. It's kind of embarrassing. I do this like kind of Lou Reed uh, nodding at Roger Waters type of where I just kind of talk vocals. Um, so when I got that VG8 and started going through the process of filling it up with only the best sounds, because there's a lot of sounds out there for it and it has limited memory. I shouldn't say limited, it holds so many sounds. But I went through that process and it dawned on me that I would be a fool if I didn't take advantage of this and record with it. So that, uh, after I went through that process, I contacted Jimmy and I said, I think I'm going to record an album. It's like, in order for me to like pay you back in some way that you know that this went to a good home, that I didn't just take it and like try to flip it on eBay or something, you know, but I really would, because I can't use it live. Live, we the way we do it is through battery powered gear, and this thing is it's an AC device. So because I think he said something to me like, "Oh yeah, you know use it live. It's great." And I was like, "I just don't know how to tell you I can't use it live." So I said, "I'm going to record an album." That's what I've done. Jimmy Photon resuscitated my recording career. Like me and a couple of people that live under my roof are really the only people that have really heard this stuff. So every year now in like January 10th, it's really cold and snowy here in Chicago, so I will record music. This year, I mean, I could talk about all of them. Minor Tech had sound effects in between the songs, digitally delayed. My wife played the bass, and those were songs that we played live. So that was recording our set. We had like 30 songs on there. I did another one called 02022020. And that was like the day that I started recording that was in February. It's the 2nd of February. Which may end up being the thing now if my daughter lives in New York, and if that works out for her. She's kind of been through a lot of well, I'll just say that if she continues to stay in New York and continues to come out here and visit us a week after the holiday, which is what she did this year, I'm not going to want to be in the middle of recording when I have this family drama and all this stuff going on, because it messed me up this year big time. So 02022020 I'm really proud of, although no one seemed to notice that one. I really like that one. And then last year's people responded to it. I kind of hyped it, and it just seemed like there was a lot of people there. People were offering to pay for it, so I made like $40 or $50, $10 a copy for digital download of it off of a Google Drive. You know, I guess I should say something about the music on 0202. It does this, like, there's a lot of like scales on it, kind of, which I continue to do. I continued that. Um, the next one is called uh, Semantical Nightmare, and that was getting everything hooked up. I changed my interface, and once I got everything set up, like, it was a real pain in the neck to get the setup going. So I called it Semantical Nightmare because that seemed to be what that meant. Like, this is a pain in the neck to get all this crap set up. Semantical Nightmare. And then that was the product of that, and people seemed to respond to that one well. It has kind of like two sides to it with the videos. There's like random videos at first, and then there's a black and white film of family of cats with kittens on the last half, and that really works well as a whole, as a piece that stands on its own, I think. So this year I had like 25 ideas in my idea folder, and then when I went to record them, none of them worked. Like none of them. So I my philosophy for this one was throw everything else out the window and just come up, turn the let the drum beats inspire the music, which is a different way of going at it. Normally, I'll write the guitar and force the drums to fit the guitar piece that I wrote. This was going to pre-canned drums and playing them and coming up with something to play along with it. So, along with that philosophy, I immediately began to think of some different ways to do it. Like, don't trip out on when you're tracking. Normally, I trip out. I like really micromanage on everything being perfect. Let there be mistakes. Second, don't worry about the mix, don't worry about the mastering. Don't worry about the video. This was like step outside of yourself and all of the rules and stipulations you normally put on the music and just let it all come out as quickly as you can and see, does anyone notice? So I didn't do any. Normally, I'll do a bunch of GR1 synthesizer. At the beginning, I did. I used the GR1 a little bit here and there. There is some GR1, and then I would go over on this other computer that has a bunch of soft synths. It has Spitfire Labs, which is really good sounding. Not so much instruments, but like soundscapes. Like you hold it down and a whole thing will happen. It's more like cinematic, or for if you were going to do a soundtrack, I would want to have that Spitfire Labs, and it's free, but it's really really good sounding. Then I got some Mellotron plugins that were awesome, like really good Mellotron. So it was a bunch of GR1 synth tracks. It was a bunch of that kind of cosmic, sweeping, epic sounds from Spitfire Labs, and then Mellotron. And I did two different mixes of it. I did an early mix that's doesn't have the Mellotron, but it has everything else. And then I did the Mellotron. And the Mellotron mixes are that's the one to listen to. It's really full and lush sounding. This year, thin skinned. I have people telling me I'm thin skinned. People that I know and love will ignore me or hurt me. And then I'll say something. And then I get accused of being thin skinned. I have complete unknown strangers attack me and obsess over me. Like I had people, like a whole group of people thumbing down all my videos, and that was another thing I was accused of being thin-skinned. So this album was kind of a test. It was like, don't worry about any of that stuff. And also, I had a bunch of drama. I was psychologically not in a good place. There was a bunch of family drama involved in not knowing what was going on with my daughter. Now I found out, she finally called me, knowing that she had broke up with her baby daddy in September, and I find out she's living in New York with a new guy. And they came in right at the tail end of this recording, so I was just kind of emotionally in a really bad place. This was not a good Christmas. Neither one of my kids attended. I didn't see my kids. So like not getting gifts from them, not getting a phone call, it just really hurt. And not knowing what was going on, then we attended Christmas on my wife's side of the family, and that was not healthy for me to be in that environment of people who are just kind of really rude and ignore me and treat me like, anytime I'm around a family thing, if we're treated like we're ignored or we're, you know, like we get the call right before the thing happens when everyone else has known for months, that type of stuff. So that affected me, and I was in an unbelievable low point emotionally coming into this, and that really affected my ability to work creatively. So that's what you get. You get a bunch of throwaway songs that are poorly done. Um, a couple of them are up tempo. There's some good guitar tricks on there. It's not a horrible album. It needs some better mixing and mastering, but people responded well to it. I mean, this is me looking at it from my own thing, and any artist looking at their own work is going to tend to have a different set of eyes on that. And you can, at times, when you're all messed up inside, you can really do well and really write some of the best music. I don't think that was the case on this, and we're going into 31 minutes. So I'm going to let you guys go. That's the story of my career as a recording musician, and more specifically, this album. Before I cut you guys loose, I do want to say that I appreciate every single one of you guys who are watching this stuff. People that comment, I really appreciate that. And most of all, people I consider my friends who have commented over the years. Thank you. I hope you'll stick around. It means so much to me that you do comment. And hey, what's up, Pink Jimmy Photon? If you're watching this, thanks again. Don't forget to try to stay warm, hug your pets, and peace.